So, such a pleasure to be here today virtually. A bit about this course. Digital with Akash was an idea I had literally 2 weeks ago on a Saturday morning. I just had finished doing a lot of consulting one-on-one with people, and I felt there was a lot of things that were said that was such a shame that it was just one-on-one, and I couldn't reach a lot of people at the same time. So I felt it was no better way than perhaps doing a live course open to everyone, but the course being for having the opportunity to discuss more than just a specific topic, to go really into detail. So albeit this course will be quite an introductory level of social media marketing, which, to be honest, is quite a broad spectrum of topics that could be discussed. So I will do my best to cover a lot of different avenues. But as the course progresses every Friday, it will be a lot more specific, especially when we discuss for things like Google Analytics, PPC, etc. So this will hopefully enable people, if you're a business working in a company, have your own business, you're an influencer, an aspiring influencer, or you're just a consumer of the internet, like a follower, this course is for you. And it's just basically to give a few learnings and hopefully help you in your journey as well. So perfect. Great. Someone says they can't hear me. I think you can, right? Hopefully. Perfecto. Can everyone hear me? I just want to make sure. Perfect. Great. So a lot of yeses. Okay, great. You don't need to say yes. Thank you. We're going to start away with just explaining the courses. So we'll be discussing these in general: influencer marketing next week, affiliate marketing the week after, search engine optimization, all about your Google presence, content marketing, that basically is involving what are the best apps for you, what's the best equipment to have, how do you create good content in an affordable budget, email marketing, how to create emails, how to do MailChimp, etc. Paid search and PPC, understanding the basics of Google Ads, and then Google Analytics, a very important topic as well, which hopefully people will be of interest. And it's important to know this is a very communicative course, so we'll be doing after every course a sort of questionnaire. So if you guys feel you want something else a bit more in depth of another topic, we can amend the courses. So this is sort of like you have 2 months every Friday of me, and we can kind of play it by ear. But for now, that's the general way of working. Just for those who say to maximize the slides, etc., you can change the gallery view. So it's up to you to change how you want to see it. If you want me to be big or me to be small, it just depends on your gallery settings. So you can do your view settings like that. So I thought I first will start as quick as I can, just explaining a bit about my journey, because a lot of you might know me from different parts of my life. Some of you might not know me at all, because you might have been referred to this course by someone. So I'll quickly do a very, kind of overview of my life, and hopefully then giving that legitimacy of why I am doing a digital marketing course. So I started with electronic engineering at university. And I studied at Imperial College London. I did a 4-year course, but I had a lot of potentially struggles I failed some exams. It was very difficult for me because I initially thought, digital wasn't in my radar. I was a mathematician and a science freak. So that was my path growing up. And then I realized very quickly at university, when you go really specializing something, like, is this for me? Is this my path? So I was very fortunate to have sometimes those failures, because it really led me to go deeper into understanding, is this what I want to do in life? So at that time, I actually got the opportunity in the year gap to intern at Burberry. And that was my first experience in digital marketing. So that was basically when I realized, oh, this is something I really enjoy. It's very self-intuitive, and it's something I want to spend a lot more time on learning on. Without realizing at the same time, while I was at university, I was an aspiring singer. So at that time, my producer, Sam, was telling me, you should aim to gain more followers on social media. It will really help you with your music career, because you'll get more likely to get more gigs and to be picked up by a record label. So at that time, I was on that pursuing journey of gaining more followers and increasing my awareness of my music. So I tried a lot of different techniques back then, from the typical advertising, giveaways, emails, etc. And that, without realizing, when I started my first official job as an unpaid intern in Estee Lauder companies, when all my friends were doing the finance banking jobs in six-figure salaries, there I was unpaid. And I knew that was my path. So it didn't matter how quick I grew. It was about that I was doing the thing that I loved the most. But without realizing, someone was telling me, one of my colleagues, that you know social media, you have a presence already from your music. Why don't you try doing something with social media managing? And at that time, it was a very new concept in companies. So I was very young at the time, 21, and I decided to pitch myself as a potential candidate when they were hiring, saying, I know I'm young, but I think I have enough experience in social media, having done it myself. And then I ended up landing the role. I think I was one of the youngest managers at the time globally. And that was where my career really kickstarted in social media. So I looked after social media and a bit of paid advertising as well for UK and Europe, and doing a lot of trainings on digital marketing to all the salons that the brand had. So that was very exciting. And then I got picked up and I got opportunity to move to Dior in Paris. And then I spent the next 3 years around approximately there, looking after earned media. So my topics were mainly revolving around micro-influencers initially, then it went into community, then it went into affiliate marketing. It sort of like picked up new scopes each year. And that was mainly due to the fact that I really used the moment in Dior to be as entrepreneurial as I can. And I think, working for such a big company, initially my thoughts were dubious to see if I could potentially change the game. Like, it's such an established company. Was I able to start new things, or should I just do what's been done before? But I really knew that my path wasn't to stay in corporate. My path was always to have my own business. So if I didn't use my experience to act as if that was my own company, with every budget and every pound being as if it was my money, then that wouldn't be the best training for me. So I used that opportunity in Dior to be as entrepreneurial in digital as I can and push the boundaries. And I was very fortunate because the top management there at the time were so open to learning new avenues of digital and pushing the boundaries. And the digital marketing team at Central and locally were really, innovative. So for me, it was a perfect family to be in to kind of propel new ideas. So a lot of great things we did there during my time. And I was fortunate to get a Forbes 30 under 30 title during my time there, which for me was a real reassurance that I was doing something unique and entrepreneurial within an established company. And then I decided to take the leap to move into my own business, where with my sister, we created a brand called Fable and Mane, which is currently launched. It's an Indian-inspired, Ayurvedic-inspired hair care brand. We've actually launched it at Sephora in the USA, and we're expanding in Europe and globally very soon. We actually launched it also during the whole COVID-19 situation. So it's been a bit tricky, but a huge learning curve, especially with digital now being the forefront of businesses. So I think using the learnings I did in the last 5 years in corporate has really helped the business today propel within this current landscape. And at the same time, because when I left corporate, I was asked to sort of consult for certain brands, I decided to create my own digital agency. Couldn't come up with a unique name, so I just called it Akash Agency. Was the easiest one. And it's all about basically conscious branding for digital marketing to be as sustainable as possible. I think that's very important. So that's a bit about my journey. And the reason for this course was because during the last 2-3 years, I've done a lot of talks and conferences around the world, and been speaking at different summits. And I really felt that it was a shame that all the things I was speaking about were only to the room in the audience, and no one else, like, especially everyone here on the Zoom call, you wouldn't be able to hear what I was saying. So I wanted to create a sort of live, unique way to speak to my followers and also new people, to explain some of the social media marketing and digital marketing knowledge I have. And hopefully it's of interest to everyone today. So I'll be honest, when I created this course, my first kind of call to action was, okay, let me look what everyone else is doing out there. I signed up to a bunch of courses and I was thinking, how can I structure this to be like similar to typical educational systems like courses online, but also be my tone of voice. And not to say that these courses aren't good, and I think they definitely have a place in the market, but I honestly canceled my subscription after like 10 minutes of doing it, because I realized this isn't the way I learned. And I kind of felt like they weren't really grasping at what social media or digital marketing is. And I really feel the reason why I feel that is because I've learned everything by just doing. So I thought the best way to, to kind of do this course is to just explain how I know it. And there's no right or wrong, I felt. So I just will create my own system. And it might not be something that's familiar because I'll be doing a lot of life anecdotes and stories, but I think that's what the whole opportunity is. And in the day, it's just an hour of your time. So hopefully it'll be a good listen to hear some of the stories and some tips as well. So first and foremost, social media marketing. So social media marketing to the average person is a form of internet marketing that involves creating and sharing content on social media networks in order to achieve your marketing and branding goals. So traditionally, this would be building awareness. It could be for a brand driving sales or website traffic. It's basically using those platforms to facilitate a specific KPI. But it's important to first know this current landscape we are in. So we are currently, obviously, as you know, have 7.8 billion people in the world, and 5.2 billion people are unique mobile phone users. And of that, 3.7 billion are active global mobile social media users. So I think 3.8 billion is like desktop only. So it's pretty much all mobile, and nearly half of the population is online and is on social media. So that just shows why it's so important today that we understand and also navigate the waves of social media that we're all facing, whether it's in our own personal lives or as a brand as well. And the average person checks their phone every 12 minutes. I think I looked at that number and I personally didn't know if that was like true, but I think it is. And that's 30,000 times per year. And also has 7.6 social media accounts. So what that basically is like things from LinkedIn, WhatsApp. These are also social media accounts. So we have a lot right now. And we check our phone around 3 to 4 hours per day, which I'm sure most of you probably even check it more. I mean, I always look at my screen time and I'm quite shocked by the results. So we're on our phone and everyone is pretty much, doing this. So we're all at fault of this. But in terms of actual social media apps, I mean, we have the traditional Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, YouTube, TikTok, Messenger, WeChat, Weibo, the list goes on. But actually what I found really interesting is by analyzing the number of active users today, like right now, and Facebook is still very much the forefront as we speak, followed by YouTube, WhatsApp, Messenger, then WeChat, and then Instagram and TikTok. So right now, a lot of brands, a lot of individuals, we focus a lot on Instagram, and now we're starting to question, is TikTok the next Instagram? Should I be on TikTok? I think while those are very legitimate questions, we have to be asking ourselves, are we also leveraging the existing accounts that we have today? And are we doing them well enough? And I will give my perspective on this from a unique point of view that I feel I have, which is I am an influencer. I have a certain amount of following and I do have my own social media accounts. I am also a brand with my own brand, Fable and Main, and having worked in corporate before, but I'm also a consumer of the internet. I follow people. So if you're watching and you are in any of these situations, hopefully I'll be able to relate to all of those today. And for those asking, this recording will be posted later, or so don't worry if you can't hear. I know some people are having this, so you'll be able to access it later. So I will be explaining from me the 5 phases that I feel are integral to social media marketing today. And you can kind of adapt this, but in general, these are the 5 phases that I would recommend everyone to stick to on their social media marketing journey. And this is identifying, listening, engaging, marketing, and measuring. So I will first start with identify, and that's usually the beginning of everything. So this means basically finding your niche and your prospective audience. And it's very, very, very important to do this at the beginning because a lot of brands today don't know their niche, or a lot of influencers don't know who they're particularly targeting. They might have vanity metrics or vanity goals of, I just want to gain followers or I just want to gain money. But without that knowledge of who your niche is, the rest is going to be very unsustainable and it's going to be very hard to grow as well. So it's important to do that, but at the same time, also analyze your initial metrics. So for example, me personally, I have a lot of followers in India. I'm sure a lot of people here are from India right now, but I'm born in London and I live in London. So I have to make sure that everything I do does have that time frame difference, but also goes for a very global approach to make sure I'm facilitating for all my audience today. And I also try to make sure to always have a reason, because my dad always taught me from a young age, if you don't have an authentic story or reason, It's very, very, very difficult to survive today in this marketing world. So I will give you an example as a case study from me. So I initially started as a singer, and that was my audience, but I grew. So once I completed the cycle from I identified, listened, engaged, marketed, and measured, then I re-looked at my new audience or my new niche, and I started again. And then I became a travel influencer because I started to realize I was traveling a lot and people were really engaged in the travel content. So I then kind of dropped music a bit and I started really focusing on my travel photos at that time, which 3 years ago, when you're on Maldives in a beach, those are the hot photos to have back there. And that's how I gained a lot of my following. But without realizing, when I was in corporate, and I haven't had really a break because I've never been a full-time influencer, I did share a lot of my journey of Estee Lauder, Dior, and I think a lot of my followers were either recruited or started to learn about that kind of business journey. And I started realizing, well, a lot of people are really interested in my entrepreneurship stories. So then I started now identifying myself as maybe someone who has a niche in entrepreneurship, digital marketing, thus this course. So it's important that I've always analyzed this and I've always sort of gone back and resetted it because we evolve as humans, the market evolves, and it's important that it's a journey that always changes. And from a brand point of view, I made sure before I started any job in any of my past experiences that I took the time to understand the niche and the audience that they currently have. And one tip I did was I didn't rely on just the digital marketing team. I set up meetings with the CRM team, with the HR team, and I tried to understand what is Dior, who is the clientele. And I think from that moment, I was able to have a much more 360 journey because digital is more than just social media platforms. There are real people that are on the end of this. And you must know the 360 of a brand's DNA to really understand your digital presence. And that really helped me to then also decide, fine, I want to make sure that with digital that we stick to who our consumer currently is, but is there also room to push the boundaries and prospect new audiences that perhaps should be prospected because the times have changed and no one has necessarily taken the time to figure out who those should be. So that's something that I did hopefully quite effectively during my time in corporate. And then listening. So once you identified your need, it's like also starting a brand. Once you've identified what your product is, you do market research. You need to start listening to social and understanding. So from a personal point of view, I monitored the market. Even right now, I'm looking and I'm starting to follow the leaders in entrepreneurship, in mindfulness, in digital marketing, the topics that I'm currently interested in pursuing. And I started to learn the right methods and create my own best practices from their successes. And it's sort of like, that concept of, do you reinvent the wheel or do you listen and do it maybe better? That's sort of what I started to do when I started listening to people on the internet today. And then if you're a brand, there are an array of tools that you can use to listen and do benchmarking against similar competitors, from Tribe Dynamics, Synthesio. Influencer DB is a plugin that can vet following. There's so many things, but we'll go through these in details in the later courses where relevant. But in general, these are the sort of listening tips that I can give that are important to do before you start engaging in marketing. And then engaging. So what this means is to start that journey. How do you start building the followers? How do you grow your network? And for me, there are certain tips that you can do, both paid and organic. So I would start, for example, by looking at your leaders and see if there's a way to recruit from them. Can you start commenting on your favorite influencers' posts and say, look, I've just mimicked the same style. I've done my own video on digital marketing. Would love for you to check it out. Leverage their audience to hopefully gain some attraction from their audience onto yours. Also, tactical but organic ways would be, for example, one thing I did in my journey, I knew I wanted to reach a lot of people that meant something to me being an Indian. So I actually had some people from like Bollywood Instagram pages with like 10 million followers contacted me. And I kind of made a relationship with them saying, I would love to be, reposted on your account to have access to the audience that they currently have. But still there's a legitimacy because I'm a proud Indian that has a story to tell to hopefully many people out there. So, there's tactical ways you can grow and be leveraged by existing leaders of the field that doesn't necessarily cost you a lot. And then, of course, if you're a brand, you can start doing targeted ads, or if you're an individual, I personally do recruitment ads on my personal channel, but I just spend around $10 or $20 a week. If you're a brand, you can spend above $1,000. But today it's true to gain and start engaging with people to come find your platform. you have to sort of look at kind of paying as well and, doing ads, because right now it's a very competitive market and very saturated. But the thing that most people don't think about is the migration. So do you currently have a database that you haven't tapped in or you can tap into to migrate onto this platform? So let's say Instagram, for example. If I'm a personal individual, I would post on my Facebook, but I would also message my friends, use WhatsApp, tell everyone I've just launched my Instagram page, would you follow? If you're a brand, do you have an existing CRM database? Do you have other followers and other accounts that you can bring to your new channel? So migration is just as important as advertising or even organic growing. And then marketing. So for me, this is all about A/B testing. Like very clearly, you have to keep on testing and trialing because the market changes so much and so does your audience. But once you find what works, try to maximize those content or those avenues of creating those content and be very regular. It's very important that today, like, we don't give up, because it's very easy. For example, let's say you're starting a YouTube channel and you end up creating beautiful videos and it takes you 10 hours to edit. And then every time you post it on a Friday, you're getting 100 views, 150 views, 80 views. And you're sort of like, is there any point me going on? Is it worth me continuing? Absolutely, because if you're very sure about your reason and you have a niche and you have a cause, you should just be as consistent as possible, because it just takes one video to go a bit viral for then all your previous videos to be seen. So that's where it's so important to be consistent, but also making sure that every content is linking back to your identifying reason and your niche and your audience. So you're always staying true to yourself. You have to be patient, but it can happen. But also, once you started to find what works best, innovate within that. So try to be also the market leader and try to get market share in the social media presence, because there's only so much copying or doing the same thing does. If you want to grow, you got to innovate as well. But it's always first better to start with figuring out the best ways before you go straight into innovation, because it can be a bit tricky and not always successful. And then the last is measuring. It's similar to listening, but instead you're not measuring with the intent to figure out your way to market. You're measuring to understand, was it effective? Should I continue? Should I adapt? Should I change? Is it who I am today? So for me, for example, if I didn't do my measuring and understanding, okay, I've gained more audience, but are they really interested in my travel, or are they interested in my Dior story? Or are they interested in my digital marketing knowledge? And if I didn't do that, I wouldn't even be here today. I would just be continuing posting travel photos every day. So I think measurement of understanding, seeing your metrics, seeing who's saving your photos, are your impressions growing? Are people interested in your stories? Are people swiping up? Are people interacting with your polls? All those stuff are very important. And one way I've noticed this is when I do polls for my Instagram, I see like normally around 4 to 5 times more engagement on the polls when I post about entrepreneurship, even Dior, even marketing, than when I post about something like food or travel related. So the way to see these metrics, for example, would be within your Instagram app or within your social apps, but there are also platforms that you can work on. If you're a brand, it's a lot easier because there are a lot of platforms that you can have with your budget. For example, there's like a Synthesia, Tribe Dynamics, and we'll talk about that in the next topics. But if you're an individual, you could do stuff like Social Blade. That's an easy way just to see if your following is increased. You can do Hype Auditor to see your quality of your audience. But generally, Instagram has very powerful metrics, and YouTube as well, and even Facebook and even Pinterest. So just using the internal metrics and really acknowledging them and analyzing them is very, very important. So those are the 5 phases. I will be sharing this presentation for people who've just joined. I will be sharing this presentation after. So no problem if you're just joining in. Absolutely. These are the 5 phases that I would recommend, and really try to stick to that within your marketing journey, and don't be afraid to restart the cycle as you evolve, or as a brand evolves, or as a social media landscape changes. But I wouldn't be able to continue without being, personally, I'm someone of an advocate of sustainability and mindfulness and consciousness. It's something that I've been born with, having my grandpa being a guru, and mindfulness and meditation and yoga has been something that's been with me for my whole life. And I try to figure out, is there a way to like tap into that and connect it with my work, you know, with my office life, with my corporate life. And I really found like my mind and the way I use things has propelled me. And a lot of people have asked me, how do you spend 3 hours a day sleeping and, you know, 21 hours working? And it's all because of the power of your mind. And I feel that's why if I didn't address this, I would be doing an injustice. So of course, social media marketing is so important and it's something that we need to continue doing. But it's very, very important as well to think of the potential negatives, which we all know exist around social media marketing, and adapting our marketing strategies to be as sustainable by acknowledging these facts. So I will first start with this pie chart, and this is what led me to start this journey to learn more. So basically, when I saw this, my first initial, like, I'm sure many of you are looking at this and would say, oh, 48% millennials, that's probably people who use social media or people who are engaged with influencers. Well, I'll tell you the truth. This is actually people who worry about negative effects of social media on their physical and mental health. So millennials are the ones who are using the internet the most, are the ones that are most worried about social media going forward. And this is taken from around, I think, 20,000 people, and it shows that there are around 85% harmful effects and harmful and positive effects, but you know that means like there's only 15% positive or not sure only. So this is an issue that we're all facing, and personally, I'm at that 50-50 crossroad where I see a lot of positives with social media, but I also see a lot of potential, you know, stress points and dangers that we need to be mindful of going forward, both as a brand, but also as an individual and a consumer of social media. And this is also something that was quite alarming to me. So 9% of the population, which is around the population of USA, has internet addiction disorder already, and it's probably a lot more than that. It's probably a very humble percentage. And what that basically means is we have a natural chemical that's now being excreted more from the brain called dopamine. So dopamine basically is that chemical that's basically caused with drug addiction or like, you know, going to the casino. And if you think about it from this analogy, imagine you're on your phone and, you know, I'm sure Instagram staggers the likes. So you keep on swiping and you're seeing 2 likes and you swipe again and you see, oh my God, I got 10 likes. It's a bit similar to being on like on a fruit machine or a roulette, like you win, you lose, you win a bit more, you win a bit less. It's that same effect. So we're getting addicted without even realizing. And I don't think the giants of Instagram, Facebook, you know, are doing enough to really monitor or potentially, you know, restrict that. And it's actually proven people with internet addiction disorder have changes in white matter of their brain. And that can lead to things like Alzheimer's at a much early age. So the reason why this is perhaps not in the media as often as we would like or not talked about is because we're in the infancy of this journey. We are the beginning users of social media. You know, it's only 10 years old pretty much. And we have started that journey without necessarily seeing the side effects. So if we're not mindful now and, you know, monitoring the usage and being cautious of how we proceed, not only is our future going to be a bit worrying, but also the next generation. So it's very, very important to just have this in mind throughout your marketing strategies and how sustainable and aware are you being about these topics. Another thing is about data. So just to give you an example, there's a machine learning tool out there that can actually know more about you when you like 70 photos or videos on Instagram. So that will know more about your sort of interests than your friends. And 300 likes of yours will know more about you than your spouses. So that's quite a scary statistic that's been proven in this case study that you know, the data that we're sharing, even through a like, is quite, you know, worrying. So there are some tips I want to suggest to people out there on just safety on social media. So this is avoid, you know, geotag locations. No one needs to know exactly where you are at the exact same time. Message companies privately. A lot of people can pretend to be you and call companies to get more information about you. Try to keep as much of the information private. If you don't want to be a private account, just be mindful of how much, you know, are you keeping out there? Is your Instagram, does it have your mobile number on there? Two-factor authentication. Try to make sure that, you know, you have ways to secure yourself from being hacked. Assume everything you post is public. I think that's very, very important because even for me, like the minute I post anything on social media, it just takes one person to screenshot it in 1 second and it's already out there on the internet forever. So it's very important. And yes, similar to geotag locations, avoid real-time posting. Try to, you know, post your stories a bit delayed. No one needs to know exactly where you are in the exact moment. We don't really all care. So just be a bit mindful about that. Very, very important. So some tips I will give you is pay attention to your social media usage. One little way I do it with one of my friends in Paris, we have a way of like every Sunday, we send each other screenshots of our social media, of our screen time on our phone. And whoever's got the more screen time has to pay the other person like €5. So it's a little joke, but it actually works. I'm actually mindfully like trying to use my phone less for this little game. Hopefully in time, I'll just be naturally doing that. Approach it mindfully, being careful. Are you vetting and limiting the content you're seeing? We are able to follow and unfollow accounts. So we have the power in our hands. So if you're at home, you're a bit upset and you're watching someone, maybe not right now because everyone's in lockdown, but you're watching someone in Maldives and you're working away, unfollow that person for a bit, block the content for a bit. Just be mindful how it's making you feel. You have the power to turn it on and off. And then listen to your moods and behavior. And if it gets overwhelming, social detox, take a couple of days off, that's all perfect. But remember, above all, real life trumps all. So, the social media journey that we're all adopting, whether we're a brand, influencer, individual, there's so many merits I don't even need to explain. It's brought me to you guys today. But these tips are important for the sustainability of it for the future. And I wouldn't be able to do this course without mentioning that. So I think that's very just important from an introductory point of view from this course's intention. So I've got some Q&A questions already made. And if we have time, I will make sure I will address some of the questions you have in your Q&A section too. But I think these are some questions on social media marketing that a lot of you will find interesting. So we'll go through them. And I think if you have more questions, please feel free to write on the Q&A section with your extra questions. So the first was, which I got asked on my Instagram, was how to make a deeper connection with the audience. So this question is sort of like a two-pronged approach, because initially you wouldn't need to necessarily ask it if you really understood your first part of the phases. What is your reason? What's your why? Do you have your niche? Do you have your audience? And then once you have an authentic story, you're automatically going to have a deeper connection with the audience you're building. The one thing I think now is really powerful is, for example, live streaming. I think it's a very great tool. I'm quite late to the game. I always got a bit scared about being like live with someone, but I'm seeing so many people doing that during lockdown, and it's actually been really great. So live streaming is a great way to be as close to someone. Also kind of really reacting with your community, or with your, as a brand, having a community management manager is very important. Are you listening to your audience? Are you answering the questions? Are you engaging? And I think, that's something with any corporate thing, like you have to make sure you're asking questions as well. They will ask questions, but you need to ask questions too to your audience. And that's the best way to get a deeper connection. And the last thing is being really yourself. Don't try to like gain followers for the sake of gaining followers, or, being someone you're not. At the end of the day, they're following a virtual you. And if you're not being as authentically you, then that's all it is. It's not really you then, it's just virtual. So try to be really always you. And I think that's the best way to get the deepest connection with your audience. How can luxury brands monetize their social media audience? So this is actually one of the things I wanted to do going into Dior and many companies. I really wanted to kind of fill in the gray areas. I felt the biggest problem for me was that social media was like a black hole. Like no one knows more than a followers. You have this big issue of, is it fake following? Is it real following? What's the quality of the following? And the worst thing is most brands today, they just are obsessed about a number. Are we at 20 million followers? Are we at 1 million followers? Instead of understanding the quality and the value of the followers, because today that's the most important. And my favorite word, data. How much data do you have of your audience? There was something that many companies have CRM, and I was always like, why don't we have social CRM? Like, what if Instagram tomorrow deletes itself? You then lost all this money, all this budgets. That number is just becoming a nothing, you don't own that data. So you should try to find ways to gain your, more data from your social media audience if they're willing to share. So for example, doing swipe ups to sign up to, even like this, for example, like I've got a lot of emails from everyone because I did this course. That's a way of, I haven't decided to monetize, but I could monetize from my social media audience. For brands, they could be doing the same. Can they kind of create things off their social media platform, but still getting more data? And then only then can you start monetizing. So I think that's what luxury brands don't do too well. And I think it's because they don't communicate internally well enough. They're teams in silo. And then also you have that global and local like disparity. So I think having someone in a leadership role or a top management role that's sort of very digital focused and is able to make those decisions a lot quicker can lead to luxury brands making a lot more use of their social media audience. What content are people seeking from beauty or brands and social media in general? I think people are, this is a question that changes a lot because I think people's, interest in content does evolve and does change. Right now, I mean, compared to a year ago, before I used to love long content, 1 hour long, really immersive content. Now with the whole rise of TikTok, I'm very interested in these like little quick 5 seconds, 10-second videos. So I think a beauty brand or any brand needs to be very aware of what content is engaging well, either on their own accounts or on their competitors' accounts or benchmarked accounts. But usually I think people are seeking from authentic stories, diversity and inclusivity mentioned very clearly in their story, especially right now where it's more relevant than ever. That's super important. Transparency between the brand or the influencer and the follower. And then in terms of the actual content type, I think videos, live streaming, and anything that's sharing a bit more than just a blanket, beautifully edited photo would be sort of the future of this. How do you identify what is the best social media platform to market on? So I think this again comes to your identification of what's your niche, what's your audience, and then you can understand where do those audiences mainly lie. If you are targeting people above 60 years old, what's that social media platform that has that predominant age range? Not TikTok perhaps, but maybe Facebook. But I would say the best social media platform to market on would be, I mean, from an ads perspective, Facebook is really good because it's less saturated than Instagram and more cost effective. From an awareness point of view, I think Instagram is very strong, a bit harder to be seen, but very strong. And from a sort of relatability, fun, kind of, very connected point of view, TikTok is very good too. But I think you have to depend on your brand. It's a very, very open question. And I think only you have to ask yourself that. It's very hard for someone to, advise that, but there are a multitude of platforms out there from even LinkedIn. I'm loving LinkedIn. LinkedIn is one of my platforms that I'm really using right now, obviously to do with my message of being more about entrepreneurship, mindfulness, digital marketing. So it's perfect on LinkedIn. I'm not on the TikTok game and I don't think I will be, but that's just, I know my niche and I know my audience is not particularly on TikTok. Advice from new startups. Okay, so for digital marketing spend for startups, my recommendation is, this is a very tricky one. I can say it from someone who has their own brand with also very limited starting budgets. I don't have my Dior budgets anymore. I'm the master of knowing how far £10 can go. Like I did that with my own account growing up, in university with my own music. So I know even $10 or £10 is a lot in terms of what you could do with it. So there is no such sense of like a right budget. I just think, testing, the A/B testing, very small, steadily. And then once you see things start working, start investing more. And I think for small businesses is to really understand your customer acquisition cost from social media very early on. So making sure you're measuring very clearly your metrics. So if you're spending $100 on this audience and you're seeing your CPC, your cost per click is very high, are you doing enough to, maybe innovate within your asset type? Are you changing your audience, your lookalikes, etc.? So we'll talk more about that in the later courses. I think that will be very much interesting for the PPC social media and advertising section. But yeah, we'll talk about that a bit later. Should I boost and promote every content? I personally think, okay, so someone told me a long time ago on Facebook that, I mean, we all know this, when you have a Facebook page, I think organically, I think around 5% of your contact is seen from your followers organically. So you have to sort of boost it to even be seen by your own people who follow you. I don't know if that metric is the same for Instagram, but it's quite similar. I mean, look at the amount of stories people post in a day. I just see the first 5 and sometimes they rotate, but I don't really scroll and see everyone's stories. So I think boosting, for example, feed posts for Instagram or LinkedIn or Pinterest, I think is very important. I think people understand that they're very saturated. So if you have an important message to send, I think boosting it doesn't necessarily show bad of you. I think I wouldn't do every post. There's certain things that maybe needs to have a message you should boost. But yeah, if you feel you have a strong message to say, I would definitely advise boosting even with $5 on a post. I think it's a very good idea. And if you're a brand, I would probably say like it's not a bad idea to promote each post a little bit, especially if your engagement rate is lower and you have a big following from even, let's say, someone bought followers in the past and they regretted that. If you're a brand, it's okay, just don't do it again. But promoting posts will give you that legitimacy and engagement rate as well. So, and maybe you recruit followers as well. So I think it's a good idea. How do you get verified and does it help? Okay, so this is a very tricky one because it changes, and obviously it depends on the platform like Twitter, etc., and also how easy it is to be verified today changes because the systems change. I got verified on Facebook organically, randomly, because I just requested the badge and then it came. And then when I got verified on my Instagram, it's actually a very weird story. It was the person at Facebook at that time who said, "Congratulations, you are being verified on Facebook." I emailed and they managed to get me verified on Instagram, but now that system doesn't work. So I actually have, for a lot of my clients today with my agency and even for Fable and Main and stuff, I've been looking into this quite a bit. The best way is sometimes going via portals. So a lot of companies that, let's say you're a model and you have like Next Models as your mother company, they might have a direct portal to Facebook that can verify and request verification directly to Facebook. So even as a brand like Dior, etc., we would have an ad manager that we invest in X amount of spend in ads. So we would have a direct contact with Facebook, and then through that contact, they can request in a direct portal to be verified. And that usually can happen within a day, and it's sort of guaranteed. Now, not everyone has access to that. And usually if you don't know, if you want to work with Facebook, you've got to be spending a lot of budgets to be even noticed by them to have a dedicated account manager. So that might not be feasible. So what you could do for Instagram is you could request verification via the settings. And what you will need to make sure is you have enough press articles about you. Your link in bio is your website, and your bio is very clear and very sure of what your brand is about, or what you as an influencer is about. And you have to submit like a tax return or like a passport, and that's all you need. And I think you have 30 days each month, so you can just keep on trying, and it's a bit of a luck game. But portals are the best way, but not easy. It's a very hard question because there's not really any direct way, but it does help for sure. Like it does get your legitimacy higher. People, when they type your name, you come a lot quicker. And when you comment on photos, and that's a good way to recruit from people that have a bigger following, you will usually be the top comment, and a lot of people will like you and see your comment. So it's a very good way to get more followers being verified. Are LinkedIn and Pinterest still relevant? Absolutely. Like LinkedIn for me is a huge driver for awareness of things, especially in my field. But Pinterest, I think, is a very, very untapped, or even tapped but forgotten social media platform. One story I'll give you, and I think that will like maybe make it clearer, is when I was at Burberry, the one thing I heard was the highest purchase ever made direct from social media on account to Burberry.com was something like 50,000 euros or dollars from one person in Russia from Pinterest. And she was a unique user, never before went on Burberry.com, and just went on one photo on Pinterest to Burberry.com and purchased online. So that story stayed with me, and I thought, wow, like it's a very interesting way to think about it. Like who are the type of people on Pinterest? Are they searching for things, and are they also buying? So I think if you don't have a Pinterest account as a brand, I would really, really think about that twice and really start, growing that, especially from a sales and conversion point of view. How do I grow my followers organically? So I kind of touched on this before, but there are ways from, obviously engaging with your leaders, commenting a lot, being recognized, tagging influencers in your stories and hoping they repost you for something that can help. Doing giveaways is a very touchy one, but it does work. But you have to be very mindful, like if people following you, where are your followers coming from, which account is doing the giveaway, number one, and will they stay on for longer? Because a lot of people will just follow you and then unfollow you. So you'll have like a huge like follow-unfollow ratio. But giveaways is sort of quite an easy way to grow organically. And I don't think it's a bad idea for a brand to invest in with their influencers, for sure. I also think another good way to grow organically would be, the whole migration angle, and even doing adverts from other, cheaper platforms like Facebook, and then migrating it to Instagram once you have that data. One thing I like to do, which we'll talk about in the ad section, I like to get emails from like sign up forms with ads, like lead generation ads. And then with the email, once I've got, let's say, X amount of thousand emails for one of my brands, I can then send an email to them saying, follow us on Instagram. And that actually really works quite well. So it's an interesting way of how you're thinking about that journey of how consumers are being, how do they find the account? And I think innovating in that is very important. It's not just as simple as gaining followers via ads, etc. Yeah, user paths, exactly. And the last thing is, how do you create content and which apps? So this one, there's a content marketing webinar we'll have a later, the course. So that one I'll go really in depth. I'll do some demonstrations and it'll be very easy. And there'll be a lot of like apps for you to download and write. So stay tuned for that. But I personally have now taken the more like maybe less overthought approach and more just natural and just share what I feel, because I feel like Instagram and social media is generally going to more of an authentic platform. I know my audience is more about what I'm saying, not necessarily what I'm showing. So I no longer need to over edit and create necessarily the most high resolution and perfectly professional content. But some people, that's their niche. If you're a photographer, if you're a brand, you need to. So of course there are certain ways you have to think about it, but I will talk about that in the content marketing section, so no problem. So we have, I think, around 10 minutes left. So I will look at your Q&A and answer some questions. Won't big corporations try to maximize profit and don't care about mindfulness? Yeah, it could happen. Unfortunately, again, it all matters on leadership. A lot of these companies, they operate with people open for change, but not necessarily have the validation from higher up. So it depends on your CEO, your GM. At Dior, I was so fortunate. We had the best. So it was a very, it was one of my favorite companies, and happy to say the last corporate experience, but the best one. But it could happen with other companies. So yeah, I think it's hard, but try to push for it. What I did at Dior, I tried to make weekly meetings with people higher in the ranks, and I try to forget about age, and I just wanted to say, like, look, I have an idea and let me just keep on trying and innovating, and if you don't like a concept, I'll come back with another one. So I was very persistent, and I heard no so many times on ideas. But if I heard no, I didn't take it like, okay, I won't try. I took it as perhaps I didn't explain myself, or maybe I didn't have enough backing information or evidence to show that it's a good idea. So I went back and I built a case, and after a while I figured out the best way to really get change is to, try as hard as you can to push your ideas if you believe in them. So that's what I did. Will we get an e-certificate for the course? I mean, I'll look into that. Could be interesting. I probably don't know if it's that useful. Hopefully it is. But yeah, maybe. Other questions. What are the, okay, this is a very good question about Forbes 30 under 30. So a lot of people have asked me, how did you get that? I'll tell you the process. It might be quite interesting. So basically, I initially didn't know, I didn't think about Forbes 30 under 30. I thought I was way too young. I didn't even know if I was ready. And then someone said to me, oh, you should apply for Forbes 30 under 30. I'll nominate you. So I just told a few of my friends, okay, look, if you want to nominate me. So maybe I get seen under the Forbes radar. And actually, someone came back to me and said, look, we think you're a potential candidate. Could you fill out more information? So then at that point, you have like a lot more information to fill in. And at that point, I was really worried because it was all about like your revenue of your company to date and how many employees you have. And I was working as a company in a corporate structure as a manager. So for me, I was like, I wouldn't be even considered, because I thought they would want like founders of apps. But I tried to make a compelling case to say, look, I've been in a company, but I've also tried to be entrepreneurial within that company. So can you see me as like a business within a business? And then show what I've done in terms of metrics and success. And then I didn't hear from them. I didn't even hear anything. And then I saw on Google, like, oh, Forbes list was announced. And I was like, I didn't get it. And I was quite, not upset, but I was like, oh, okay, doesn't matter. And then I actually saw I was on the list, but no one even emailed me. So that was a really funny situation where I was like, okay, I didn't even know I was on the list, but I was on the list. So that was cool. And some other questions. I manage an NGO. We have many brand pages following us, but no organic people account audience. How can I increase my followers? If you're an NGO, again, I think kind of encouraging yourself to go live with accounts that want to support your cause is very good. I personally would go live with NGOs or nonprofits or charities, because that's something that I want to push more and more. So feel free to email me, and I would love to even help as well, or promote you guys. Yeah, I think doing stuff like that, leveraging other people who have similar interests in your companies, to then talk to you. But that, I think, is a very important point about talking about the current political, the current climate. I think firstly, I want to make sure we understand this is like not a political discussion. This is a very, like, it's not politics. This is a way of life. And I think for me, I'm really glad seeing everyone speak up about Black Lives Matter and seeing the movement really where it is today. I think a lot has to change and a lot of accountability needs to be done. But I'm just trying to make sure people focus on the reason for it and not sidetrack, because there's a lot of noise right now and there's a lot of stories and opinions. But I think just remember, as an individual, there's a reason for the movement and change still needs to happen. So for me, I'm so glad social media is allowing that to be spread as a rapid fire of like information to people, and change can happen so quickly. I do agree with a lot of people. I don't think we need to stop. I think this is it's an always on discussion. But yeah, it's going to be a bit difficult to find that balance between like social media just being just about that and still being able to still, push your messages and your stories. So I think over time it will become clearer, but right now we're still in that kind of core of the discussion. No problem. And we have 8 more minutes, so there's still time for some questions. Wow, the questions are a lot. They're from working in the luxury cosmetic industry, which influence do you think digital and newcomers had on large legacy brands? So much influence. Like, I think seeing the ones that are like growing and the ones that are seeing, when you see an influencer or someone new talk about it, or even a brand, like a new brand doing it right and seeing a lot of like attention on that, a lot of luxury big brands are starting to look at that and say, oh, okay, wow, that's really interesting. And it's something that we, even at Dior, the worry is when you're such a big brand, you have risks associated, absolutely. But I think it's very important to be also the forefront in your industry and be the first runners. So, for example, one thing at Dior, which I was working on, was I felt we had Dior makeup, Dior fragrance, Dior skincare, but we had no account that was regramming organic content, the community content. It was just very corporate and marketing. So I wanted to find a way to repost within the marketing, the initial the accounts, but I understood there was a bit of difficulty with finding that balance. So I basically proposed, can we create an account called Jewel Beauty Lovers? And Jewel Beauty Lovers was then eventually, I think with a lot of discussions, was approved. It was the first of its kind in a way in the luxury market. And we're now the largest, it's the largest regram dedicated account in any industry in the world, off the official account. And that just shows how great it is. And now a lot of beauty brands are looking at that as a strategy to say, wow, Dior has managed to do takeovers with real people, influencers, repost just UGC, user generated content. And that's something that's really cool. So I think that's definitely very interesting to see that how, we have to look at smaller brands and also then innovate within the luxury big brands. Does social media, we have a restaurant and then, okay, I'm gonna go back to the Q&As here. Effective ads, I'll talk about that in the next courses, so no problem on that. Okay, this is a very good question. Do you prefer to have one global account or local accounts? Okay, so at Estée Lauder, we had local accounts. Oh my God, it took a lot of time to educate. I had to travel to Spain, France, Italy, everywhere, train and set up those accounts. What ended up happening was you have a lot of dilution and not enough market penetration. Also, it's more expensive because you've got to do localized ads. And you also have maybe, imagine 360, you're sending something to an influencer. Do you tell them to tag X Canada or X Global, X Spain or X Global? And it was very hard to know that balance. So in a nutshell, it became very expensive and not necessarily very effective. So I personally would recommend today, create one global account, because A, it's very hard in general to grow on social media today. So I would cut your losses and don't spend too much by having like 10 accounts to manage, and more time and more content and more, it's a lot to do. So yeah, 100% one global account or a couple of global accounts with different priorities, but not local accounts, personally speaking. You can go to Facebook for local accounts. I think Facebook is good to have a localized account. Last, I think we have time for 3 more questions. So why say no to a scheduler? Yeah, so I did put that point. Okay, so reason why I say no to a scheduling post is because look at today. I mean, if you had scheduled a post during the current climate on social media with Black Lives Matter and you started posting insensitive or like not relevant material and you forgot to turn that off, it's so damaging. And looking at social media today is so fast paced. You've got to be very reactive. Something could happen in that moment, in that hour, a life disaster, natural disaster or something. And if you post insensitively in that time, it can be very damaging to your brand. Also, you lose that sense of control. Are you really making sure that everything is tagged correctly? Are you doing the shopping feature, for example? A lot of schedulers don't have that features embedded in. So I would say, plan ahead. Absolutely. I would recommend, making sure your captions are ready, your photos are ready, even on your personal account, but post it in that moment. It doesn't take a long time. It literally will just take you 10 seconds to get that image, paste that caption and post it in that moment. So for me, scheduling is a no-no. But of course, it depends on the business. And I understand for an agency, for example, it could be easy to schedule, but I recommend not to. And what should you consider when pricing yourself as a brand or as an influencer? It's a very good question. Pricing yourself is one of the most difficult things, and there's no answer. Even as an agency, when I have clients, what do I charge my clients? Every time I charge something and they accept, I always say, oh, was I too low? Was I too high? So it's very hard to decide. But I would say the best thing is sort of, again, A/B testing on your pricing. Just kind of take a step back and understand, what are you happy with? I personally have not accepted paid collaborations on Instagram since like 2-3 years. I'll tell you the truth, I used to get like, when I had like 200,000 followers, I used to get like $2,000, $3,000 a photo. It's a lot of money. And right now, that would be really nice to have in my bank. But I've personally accepted not to do any paid because I have an audience, but I don't necessarily feel like I need to be a billboard or be an advertising space. And I also felt like, from a brand point of view, I don't know if my audience would convert back in that value of money. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. But it was all these questions in my mind, and I felt like if I went down that path of just being in like a paid collaborations only and saying no to brands I like if they didn't pay me, that wasn't who I was as an individual. So I personally have decided to not accept payments, and it's made me a lot happier in my social media journey and more free and create content I like and for you guys to enjoy. But not saying it's a bad strategy. I understand that could be people's full-time job and they need to make money. So if it is a full-time gig, I would say just think of it as, you're posting an image on social media on a virtual platform. If you had $500 in your pocket, that's a lot of money. That's great. So do whatever you feel happy with. And don't be afraid to ask the brand what they're willing to pay as well, and just accept whatever their maximum is as well. So I think we basically, I can do one more question. Okay, so let's say you have Instagram. I like this question from Mohammed. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. Do you post the same content on every platform? Again, if you can avoid, I would say the first thing, if you have existing marketing content, try to obviously kind of edit and crop or size the images to be native to the content. So if it's a video on Instagram, better to be square or portrait. If it's on TikTok, portrait. If it's on YouTube, if it's on YouTube, landscape. Try to at least put some effort into that content type. And also then necessarily, for example, putting subtitles and stuff like Instagram, because a lot of people might be on the go and watching it. Things like that's important. But if you can, try to diversify depending on the platform, and think about the platform's audience base. So for example, on TikTok, it's a short video. So don't be posting heavy, 1 hour, I don't think you can even post that long content. Try to segment your content to where the audience was best matched. But I think you can get away with it. Just at least think about the cropping and the resizing. So I know it's been an hour and you probably have busy evenings or days ahead, or not, like myself, but it's okay. So next week, we will be talking about influence marketing. We'll be talking about fake followers, real followers, how to grow an influencer, what platforms to use, tips and tricks to grow organically. We'll go really into detail. And if you're a brand, how to work with influencers effectively, what to look out for, how to avoid overpaying, underpaying, how to get them if you're a new brand and you can't afford to. We'll be talking about it all. So hope you enjoyed today. I will do a questionnaire probably tomorrow and or even later today to get your feedback on today's and how you want it to structure. Do you like it more communicative? Do you like it no PowerPoint? Do you like it more Q&A based? So we'll build it together. But thank you so much for everyone watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. And a lot of yeses, and I will see you guys next Friday. Peace out. Lots of love. Bye, everyone.